Hi, welcome to Budding Cooks. My name is Betsy and I'm an intern at the Cooperative Extension Office here and also a student in the culinary program at AB Tech. So today we're going to be using our book, and on page 28 we're going to be doing blueberry muffins. So the first thing we want to really look at is how to read the recipe. You're going to have a title that's going to tell you, hey, this is what you're making. Sometimes it's going to be easy, like blueberry muffins. Sometimes it might be something a little more complicated, like, say, fettuccine alfredo. It doesn't tell you what's in it. You know it's a pasta dish, but you don't know what all goes in that sauce. So then, if you really need some help, you're going to go to the ingredients list. You're going to make sure that not only do I have all this stuff, but that I'm familiar enough with it that I'm comfortable working with it. So it's going to list the amount that you need. It can be in cups, so you're going to use measuring cups. These are usually for your dry ingredients. So you've got like a cup, a half a cup, a third of a cup, a quarter of a cup. And for your wet ingredients, you're probably going to be using one of these. This one goes up to a cup, and you just fill until the line is full with your ingredient. Now some of these ingredients are going to be in tiny amounts. They're going to be in teaspoons and tablespoons. So you're going to use your measuring spoons. Biggest one is going to be your tablespoon. Then you've got teaspoon. You can do half a teaspoon, quarter of a teaspoon, eighth of a teaspoon, all sorts of different ones. So you want to make sure that you have your ingredients measured correctly. In cooking, you can have a lot of freedom to make whatever you want, add the flavors you want. Say you're making a stir fry and you're like, it doesn't say it, but I really want a lot of garlic and a lot of salt, and I'm just going to throw in some peppers. That's totally fine. You're still going to get a cooked end product. But with baking, you have to be really, really careful to follow the instructions, because too much of one thing can either make it get really big, or stay really small, or not even cook at all. So you have to be really, really careful with baking recipes. You're also going to see a list of the things you need. So it's going to be your equipment for the day. It may be a chef's knife, it may be a spatula, it might be a mixing bowl, all sorts of stuff. So you'll look through your list to see what you need, and just go ahead and set everything out like I have here. We call that mise en place in the culinary world. That just means everything in its place. So you see I've got all my ingredients already measured out, so I don't have to worry about it. And I've got them laid out in the order that I need to use them, so that I can just follow an easy flow. And then I take breaks and I wash dishes as I go. So like while the muffins are baking, I can wash some of the dishes so I don't have a big mess to clean up afterwards. So for our muffins, the first thing we're going to do is preheat our oven. I've already done that. You set it to 375 and just let it warm up. We do that at the beginning of the recipe because some ovens take a while to warm up. So you definitely want to give it enough time so that your muffins are going to bake at the right temperature. Next thing we're going to do is take our muffin pan and our pan spray. We're just going to spray each cup, and that's just going to help the muffins come out of the pan easier. You could use cupcake liners, those work too. You might even have a silicone muffin pan, and those just pop right out. So whatever you have, the equipment you can adjust a little bit. You don't want to take a muffin recipe and put it in a loaf pan, but if you have like a different kind of muffin pan, that's totally fine. So the first thing ingredient-wise we're going to do is cream the oil and the sugar. So I'm going to put that in my mixing bowl. Make sure I get all of it out. This is going to help the muffin have the structure that we want it to, and make it light and fluffy. So we're going to take our mixer. This is a handheld mixer. You might have a stand mixer that's got like a fixed base and you put the bowl in it. That would work just as well. This is just what I happen to use. You can definitely use either way. Okay, always make sure to wait until the beaters stop moving, otherwise you can end up with a really big mess. And you definitely don't want to put a spoon or spatula in the mix while the beaters are going either, because that can damage the beaters, damage the spoon, and get some bad stuff in your mix that you really don't want. So all of my sugar is getting mixed, and it's starting to get thicker, which is what we want. So I'm just going to go just a little bit longer. You can adjust the speeds as you need, what you're comfortable with. still light and fluffy, but it's definitely all mixed together, which is what we're looking for. So we're gonna start adding our eggs. Eggs can be a little bit tricky, so you always want to crack them into a different bowl before you put them in your mixing bowl. That way, if you get any eggshells or if there's anything in the egg that makes it not fresh or not good for you, you don't have to ruin your whole mix. So I'm going to pour that guy in there, and then I'm going to crack the second one. Now for eggshells, you can always put them in your compost pile. That's a great way to use all of your product. So both eggs are going in there. I'm going to set these aside for compost. I'm going to clean up the little mess that I made here. That's one thing about cooking. No matter how hard you try, sometimes it's just going to get messy, and that's okay. We just always clean up afterwards. So we're going to add our eggs, and then we're going to mix to make sure that they get combined. You don't want any solid yolk or anything. It should all be mixed together. So when it leaves those lines in there when you're mixing it, that's called the ribbon stage. And that's what you're looking for. It's going to leave just a little bit of a mark when you mix it. So these guys are good to go. We're going to add our milk. Pour that in there. And we're going to add our vanilla. Vanilla is going to give it a nice flavor. We usually see vanilla in stuff like sugar cookies, birthday cakes. It's always a good addition. You can just stir that in because it's going to be really thin. And it's not like there's really big clumps that you have to mix in anymore. I'm just going to make sure that everything gets distributed. Alrighty. Now in this bowl, we're doing it in a separate bowl. We're going to put all of our flour, and then we are going to put our baking powder, and we're going to put in our salt. And we're just going to mix that together. You can use the same spoon, it's all going to come together anyway. Just make sure that that salt and that baking powder are distributed throughout the flour, so that way you don't have one section that's all salt. So it shouldn't take too long at all. Oops, as I make even more of a mess, goodness gracious. So we are done mixing those guys. And we're going to take this wet, we're going to add it to the dry. So that just means we're going to pour a little bit in at a time and mix it. We're going to make sure that we don't over mix it too much, because that's going to make your muffins really tough. If you overdevelop the gluten, it's just going to get really hard, and nobody wants that in a muffin. So we're just going to add it in little additions, maybe a third at a time, just so it doesn't overwhelm the mix either. Because if you get way too much, sometimes it's really, really hard to get it all mixed. So we're just going to do a little bit. It's starting to get a little clumpy. We'll add a little bit more. Starting to get that battered look. I'm going to just go ahead and add the rest. Okay, we're going to take our spatula, just make sure we got all that flour off the sides and the bottom. Sometimes it just likes to hang out at the bottom and doesn't want to get mixed in. So just make sure everything is mixed. All right, we're just going to set that there for the moment. Now, for adding the fruit, one thing that I really recommend is tossing in a little bit of flour. So the blueberries are like really, really dense. Really any of your fruits are going to be when they're compared to a muffin mix. So they're going to want to sink to the bottom because the batter is not going to be able to hold them up. But if we coat them in a little bit of flour, it's kind of like it's almost like an adhesive, and it helps it stay suspended in the batter. That way you don't lose that blueberry in every bite that you really want. So I'm just putting a little bit of flour in here, just making sure every blueberry's got a little bit. And then I'm not going to use the beaters because I really don't want the blueberries to break up. So I'm just going to pour the blueberries in, and then I'm just going to stir them around with this spoon because I don't want them to get all broken up. That's going to make your batter blue, which is definitely fun, but then you're not going to get that nice burst of berry when you get one in your muffin. So I'm just going to gently mix to make sure everyone is covered in batter. This is also a great time for you to find things like this. I'm going to try and pull it out for you. This little piece is going to be a little chunk of flour. You don't really want that. It should have been mixed in with the beaters, but sometimes there's just a little piece that's really hard, may not have been sifted all the way during the process. So you just pull those out so you don't get a bite of flour. So it's a really good time for you to check in on the batter and see how everything's looking. I'm going to move these over to the side. Now we've got our muffin pan. It has been sprayed already. So we're going to transfer our batter into the muffin tin. You're going to want to fill it about 2/3 full because you don't want it to be overfilled. If you fill it too much, when that muffin, we call it the dome, that big rounded top on part, once it starts to grow, it can grow too much and spill over the edges and just make a really not pretty muffin, and one that's not easy to eat either. And these you want to be able to eat as soon as you can, right? So we're just going to add a little bit of batter. What I like to do is just make sure each tin has a scoop with a lot of berries in it, and then I'll go in and fill it up the rest of the way with a smaller spatula or spoon, just so that everyone has the exact amount they need. And you want to make sure that they're filled the same amount. If one is filled all the way and like 3 or 4 are barely full, then they're going to bake at different times. Some of them are going to end up being burnt. Some of them are going to end up still being undercooked. So you really want to look out for making things even when you're baking or cooking. It really will make a difference when you're doing your knife cuts, when you're filling pans. You just want to make sure that everything is as even as you can be. Since these have chunks of blueberries, it's a little difficult to properly estimate how much you want in each one. It's just something you're going to learn the longer that you cook. So I know that this is about 2/3 full because I've just been doing this for a little bit longer. And the longer that you make muffins with all sorts of different fillings and fruits and even vegetables, you're going to get a hang of what your muffin tins, your oven all do, and you're going to be able to estimate things better. That's the fun of cooking. You always get to learn new things. Alrighty, we're coming down to the end here. Make sure that one's got some nice big blueberry pieces. And you can scrape some out of the ladle because there's always some hiding there. If you need just a little bit more to fill the muffin tin. If you only have a muffin tin that does 6 muffins at a time, that's totally fine. It won't affect the baking time. You'll just do 2 of them to get your 12 muffins. If you wanted to do mini muffins, you would have to look at a recipe for mini muffins because those do bake a little bit differently. But those are also fun. So are jumbo muffins. So you can learn to adjust recipes for the equipment that you have. And you want to make sure that the pieces in between the muffin tins are clean because those pieces will burn and they just taste really gross and no one wants that. I'm going to rinse my hands off real quick. Then we're going to throw these guys in the oven, and it's going to take about 25 to 30 minutes. And this is one you really don't want to check on a lot. You don't want to open that door because it can cause the muffins to collapse in on themselves. So you just want to trust it for at least the 25 minutes and then check in on it and see if they're done. So let's put them in the oven. And we'll set a timer for 25 minutes. Hi, welcome back. Our muffins have been in the oven. They just got done. So we're going to pull them out and see what they look like. Be careful of all that steam coming out of the oven. With your oven mitt, I'm just going to grab that. Oh, they look perfect. They've domed up really well. So I'm going to turn that off. Bring these over to show you. You can see how nice and golden brown they are. They've domed up really nice. So we're gonna let these set for just a minute, then we'll pull them out of the pan and enjoy.